I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. I'm delighted to introduce Midie. Midie is somebody whose name certainly I've come across quite regularly, and I believe we've met on one or two occasions as well at various different heritage events. So Midie is a long-time genealogy enthusiast. He is co-administrator of the East Galway Genealogy and DNA Facebook page together with Martin Curley. And there was an absolutely lovely post on that Facebook page today from a lady who, through our talk with Sean Brosnahan, had managed to connect with relatives that they didn't realise had gone to New Zealand and had travelled from Australia to meet Sean Brosnahan on foot of that talk, you know. So that was something really nice to see, nice and heartwarming to see on their Facebook page today. Back to Midie, he's published articles relating to genealogy and local history in the Journal of the Old Tuam Society, JOTS, and the Tuam Herald. He served as PRO for the Western Family History Association. And outside of genealogy, and I do note there's a couple of instruments there tonight, he is a performer, a director, writer, storyteller, and collaborative artist. And his current project is in collaboration with Jojo Hines called Spark Catchers, a youth-led multidisciplinary arts group based in Tuam. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the mic over to Midie and we'll kick off the fun.
So it becomes very real. Hello, good evening. Nice to see you all here. Now I am looking like Leo Varadkar, isn't it? Now, how's that? Does that look good? I decided that I'd put on a tweed McGee jacket in order that I would look like I'm giving a talk. Because if I came in my civilians, you might take me too serious. So aware that I was coming to the Historical Society, I kind of figured that I wouldn't do this too seriously. I'd imagine that a lot of people here have a background in doing genealogy, family history, local history, and all that. So I was trying to figure out a way how I was going to present this that was going to be interesting and engaging. And while thinking about it, I started thinking about quotes that I heard when I was a child, you know, things that I heard my mother saying and my grandmother saying and my aunt saying. And I thought maybe that's the way to go about this, you know, to go and present some quotes and then elaborate on that. I'm not going to get bogged down too much on my own family history. There's going to be references in there to various members of my family because that's why I'm here, obviously. But in terms of the ins and outs of doing that, if you have any questions afterwards, we can address them. But I'd say you're up to speed on most of the things that I would be anyways. I'm not an expert by any means on anything. My main interest is in social history and stories, you know, and what we do with them and where we go with them and how do we present them for the future, how do we preserve them. You know, I had a big interest in the Dukas stories. Some of you be aware of that, you know, like, so like that was one of the first things I found. I found stories that were handwritten by my first cousin, Thomas Russell, that he gathered from my grandfather. So when I saw his writing, I think that was the first thing that kind of brought me in. Thought, oh, there's a trail. So I started laying out this trail. I decided that I'd call this story or this presentation. Where's my one of the slides have disappeared? There we go. I decided that I would call it "From Many Scraps of Paper Do Large Family Trees Grow," because, like, I brought two examples. You know, this is what I started off with initially. I thought I'll get the biggest sheet of paper I have, gather all the stuff that I heard from my mother and my aunts, and start writing it down in no kind of order. So, like, this is what I ended up with. You know, it is quite a disheveled mass of names, numbers, with some information that's right, some information that's halfway there. A lot of it is just part of the jigsaw, because I see the whole thing is like a jigsaw. And when you go at this, you're looking at looking for the cover of the jigsaw box. And that, unfortunately, I don't think many of us will ever get. You know, we'll always have this notion that we'll end up with our family tree finished, but it's a never-ending thing, because you keep on finding trails. If you're like me, you start going down these rabbit holes and further and further and further and further till you end up and you've gone down and you've met with the Walshes from Tuam. And you meet them here tonight, and they say, "Oh, geez, sure, I know you." And I say, "Well, sure, you're an art tree. What are you doing in art tree? What are you doing there?" You find out you may not be connected, but there's lines that you follow, because you become, for me, I've become kind of quite obsessed with it. There's a clinical obsession at some stage. So, like, can I go on to my next slide? My next quote, I thought I'd better start with a quote. And I thought, where best to start than with my lovely wife, because she knows me best now. So I thought I'd start with a genealogical related quote from her. No? There you go. So she says to me, there is professional help you can get for your condition. Now, my wife is someone that works in that field, you know, so she understands the word. Now, I'm not for a moment suggesting that anyone here has got a condition that needs treatment, but she did suggest to me that there is help you can get for
It's connected with
an obsession. And it has become an obsession. There's no doubt about it. I meet people in Leidens of a night, and you'd be sitting chatting to them, and all of a sudden I'm talking about their family tree, and I'm not related to them, but there might be a fourth cousin twice removed of my wife. And if they're not fourth cousin twice removed related to my wife, they might be related to a cousin of someone that lives over the field from them, you know. So that's where I've come from with this, you know. So, by the way, my wife's great-grandmother was Mary O'Neill, born in 1852 in, is that Drumgriffin down there before you turn right to go up to Clonboo again? You know, the house with the blue windows, that's where her great-grandmother came out of. So there is a chance that she could be related to some of you here or in the wider picture. And that's just a disclaimer. I may not know her tree, but I ended up doing her tree as part of my condition, you know. So I have her tree done. I may stand corrected on some of it. She married one of the Glynns. His first name was, don't have it here, but it's the house with the blue windows down there anyway. So, as I've been introduced as a performer, I had to bring some props with me. This is one of them, because I don't know how I'm going to get on here. I don't know, going to appreciate what I have to bring. So I brought a cornet as well that doesn't work. But there's a story to it. Where am I gone now? Oh, I'm back here. Okay. They want to see me. Okay. Now I have to get the words because I get nervous. But I was wondering what I was going to do with all these songs that I had. And I figured now is an opportunity to play one, because I started writing songs about these people that I was, do I have this at all? Maybe I don't have them. I have to. Yeah, so I started writing songs about the family tree and about people in it, because I thought it was one way of preserving their stories. So I thought I'd introduce myself with this song, which will give you an idea that it's not like, this is a part of the reason why I do it. The reason I'm here, I think, is partly to talk about not how to do it, but why I do it, you know, so. From the bogs of Lurgan to the mills of old, many stories lost, many stories told. Land been taken and land been sold. Some were weighed with lumps of gold. Some were driven out and some driven home. Some died of splendor, others died alone. Some did and did not know of love, others done deeds never spoken of. The ones gone before, they never haunt me. They are a constant and never fault me. We're only passing by, just passing through. The fields fed many, but took a few. Some raised the Bible, some raised the gun. Some took the shill and others went on the run. Some are written in the annals of history, others chasing the wind, a forever mystery. Some express kindness, some cruel words spoken, some mended hearts, others were broken. From the bogs of Lurgan to the mills of old, many stories lost, many stories told. So really, no, I don't need clapping. I didn't, be honest, I didn't bring that for the clapping, but I think it was going to help me just frame my reason for doing this. Like, so I think the last line there is many stories lost, many stories told. Like, we've lost more stories than we're ever going to recover. And talking earlier there, we were saying, like, it is on these scraps of paper that we're going to find them. You'll find bits and pieces and biscuit tins in attics. And that's what I've been trying to do, is forge these little links between pieces of stories that I've heard, and then try and piece them together into something that I could present in some of these journals for the Old Tume Society and the Tume Herald. And initially I was inspired by a distant cousin of mine, Midie Corcoran. He was one of the Corcorans. The Corcorans were millers that were driven out of Tipperary in the 1650s by Cromwell during the plantations. And it was documented that this cavalcade of horses and donkeys and asses and carts of millwrights and millers left, crossing over the River Brosnan. They came up, some of them settled down in Lara, and the vast majority came up into North Galway. And it's known, we know from family history, that our crowd built the you know, across from the Little Mill in Tume, if you're aware, know where the Little Mill is in Tume, there's an old building that's directly across from that. And that was the first mill that was marked on a map in the 1720s in Tume, on it's the Morris map. And after that, we built the mill down in Kilshanvy. We're in Kilshanvy, that was built around 1780. We're there for about 40 years. And it was the golden age in milling, and everyone was making money on flour after Neapolitan. I call it the Neapolitan War. What is it? Yes, thank you. So it seemed at the time, North Galway was the place to it was very rich, the soil was very rich, so the wheat was fetching awful high prices, so everyone wanted to be millers. And we were quite good at it because we were millers and millwrights, so they built their mills as well. And Lewin was the landlord in Kilshanvy where we were. He was known as a serial evictor. So he was like a super evictor, you know, he was well-known class evictor. And he evicted the widow, the father of their family. He was an Austin Corcoran, an Augustine Corcoran. He had died, and the landlord came along and evicted him off the land. So the family split. Some of them went to Drumban, Drumban, Adragul, Tume, and Liskeavy. One down in Clonfad in Swinetown, just over the border there near Clonfad. They set up a series of other little mills, and they were very successful. And my line came to Tume, and he became a merchant. So he started working with the brothers that were in the mills and selling flour, and that's what he did. He became quite a merchant in Tuam. So, like, one of the first things I would have heard as a child, it was another one of those quotes was, "Oh, should the Corcorans owned half a Tuam?" And I thought to myself, "Oh, wow, geez, we must have been rich. Like, we owned half a Tuam." But my father had died when I was 12, so I didn't hear much stories from that side of it. My mother was very aware of her line. Her mother, Delia McHugh, who was my hero, she knew everyone's lines. She was an amazing woman. But I, like, being young at the time, I didn't question it, didn't ask for it, and I didn't ask enough questions as a child. But this notion that we were had owned half a Tuam, of course, appealed to me, because I grew up with nothing in my arse pocket except my arse, you know. And I thought, oh, well, what has happened? And I said it to my mother, and my mother said, you know, first generation makes it, second generation minds it, third generation spends it, and I'm 5 generations down the line, so I'm still here with nothing in my arse pocket except my arse. But where was I going with that? So yeah, I was talking about we have all these, DNA is very big now, and it's all about the traits that we inherit genetically. I think what interested me more than the DNA was these traits that we get from the family. So it was what I heard from the Corcoran side of things, the Burke side of things, the McHugh side of things, the Monaghan side of things, and mostly this came from Delia McHugh, who was my grandmother, who was my hero. And she'd say things, "Oh, sure, Martin Burke, he's the last of the Lurgan Burkes. There's not one of them like the Lurgan Burkes left, you know, because the Lurgans had left, the Burkes had left Lurgan, but he was the only one of the line. He was 2 generations from when the Lurgans had left. That's one of Martin Burke. He was very distinctive looking, all right, but I thought to myself, how is he like the Lurgan Burkes? But as I grew older, I realized his attitudes and things about him was very like the Burkes, because I started reading about them, or I'd heard more stories about them. There was lines in the McHughs, of Delia McHugh's line, and some of them all came down the religious orders. There was a very famous Canon McHugh over in Claremorris. There was a famous Pat McHugh, who was a renowned man over in America, spoke 12 languages, flew airplanes, did all this work down in South America, was quite very famous. And there was an entire line of them coming down the religious side. And then on the other side, in the McHughs, there were plasterers. You know, they did all the ornate plasterwork in the ceiling in Tuam, and down in the cathedral in Dunmore, and outside the shops in Dunmore. So they were very famous artists, used to break their molds afterwards. But they were also heavy drinkers, you know. And then there were lines of them like Delia McHugh, my grandmother, who just collected poetry and songs, and she'd a song for every day of the year. So I went, "Oh, Jesus," "am I going down the line of the priests, or am I going down the McHugh line?" And, you know, so it became apparent to me that I'm going down this line. You know, I like singing songs, and I do have the occasional pint, you know. So it claimed, and that kind of started fascinating me and getting me going, what's this fascination with trees? And I find then in the Monaghans there was this sort of thing going on here. I said, oh yeah, I can identify with that. So I started identifying the lines of the trees, and then started wanting to find out more. There was like all these names that I'd hear about Paddy Punch Burke, who was my granduncle. And I heard my mother say to me, "Sure, he broke his mother's heart. He went off and he joined the English army. And a year later, they found out he was underage, and the mother had to pay back a year's wage to the Queen at the time, you know." So a year's wage of the army was a huge amount of money. And I thought, Jesus, Paddy Punch, what a man. And all Paddy Punch wanted to do was travel. So I'd heard that he'd been to Karachi over in Pakistan, he'd been to South America, he'd fought in the World War. And I was going, Jesus, what an amazing man. And I said, what happened to him then? He said, oh, he was sent home. And a year later, when he turned 18, he joined the army again, broke his mother's heart again. So he went off and joined the army, and his brother Peter went off and joined the Navy, the English Navy, you know. I thought, wow, these were adventurers, you know. And I heard these stories about Paddy Punch. Every Friday he'd be in Dunmore, and he'd have a roll of pension pennies. He'd go down and collect his pension from the army, and we'd come out. he'd throw the pension pennies up into the air, and all the children of the moor come and collect them. And I found it in the book. It was a book written by a guy called, and the quote started when he was a child, you know, in the 60s. And I thought, oh, Jesus, there's Paddy Punch, another hero. So I started learning about him and looking for more information about him. But the further I went digging, you know, you always find that there's like underneath the rock, there's all the creepy crawlies as well. So that's the caveat of family history, isn't it? You know, you go looking for all these things, but you're always going to find something else. So while Paddy Punch is off in fighting the World War, and turns out he's in the Dardanelles, he's one of the last survivors in the Dardanelles. He came home with gas, he wasn't well, he had a gammy leg, he had a whole thing on his leg, you know, and he was very sad. Like, they said he was a sharpshooter. He could take out someone from 2 miles if someone came raiding the orchard. You know, there's all these stories as a child. I think fantastic. But at the back of all, he's very sad. And I was going, well, why is he sad? And mother told me, sure, when he came back, he says, he was after going off fighting with the English army. There was nothing in the house. There, you know, a family of 12. He had to go off and join the army to bring in some money into the house. He went off to join the army. He was a couple of years gone. His brother James, my grandfather, and the rest of them were left there, so they had to go off and do what they had to do. Turns out, I found out that Uncle Henry, or Granduncle Henry, he was on the run from the Tans. He was nearly killed in Tuam. Another brother then, he also had to go to America on the run as well. And James joined the Guards. So my grandfather, James Burke, he became a Guard. I thought, geez, this is interesting. You know, so you've got Paddy Punch gone to join, he's off with the English army, then he comes back, and then there's the lad going on the run, and then there's James Burke, who becomes a Guard. So you start putting all the pieces together, and you're going, this is a really interesting story. You know, you could have Cillian Murphy in this film, or myself and Cillian Murphy. And then you go, well, James Burke, like, let's find out about him as a Guard. So then when all the digital records from the Guards went online, I went looking for him, and on his admission records, there's a little column that says whether he had been in active service with the IRA beforehand. And lo and behold, there in it is a column, and it says sergeant. So I find out that James Burke was a sergeant in the IRA before he was in the Guards. And I'm, Jesus, the other brother, Michael, sure, he was in the Guards as well. So I looked up his record, and his record also turns out that he was a sergeant. So all through my life and all the stories I was hearing about James Burke, he was the king of the tug of war. He was, you know, he had all these medals for being captains of tug of war, and he was stationed in Ballygar. I was never once told that he was in the IRA, because he had gone free state. So it was just another one of these secrets, another one of those creepy crawly things that's left under the rock. So how much more is there? Like, so the more of that sort of stuff I started discovering, the more I wanted to find out more, because you kind of think, well, there's more to this than just social history. It's about how we're formed. How are we, you know, how do we think? So my thinking was James Burke, Free State Guard, staunch supporter of Collins. His wife, Delia McHugh, my hero, was famous for when De Valera turned up down the square in Dunmore shouting up to him, "You've some neck on you for a noose." So I'm going, oh, Jesus, yeah, Dev, yeah. You know, so when Dev was mentioned in the Burke household, it was Dev that, you know, but then in my father's side of the house, it was, oh no, Dev. James Henry, my granduncle, was the first man to invite him west of the Shannon. And James Henry was in Sinn Féin, and, you know, all of these other things. Am I on? I'm not on. Give me a slide. Sure, it might get me back on track, because I'm wavering in and out. So the reason why I was at it was all those things. I wanted to learn more. I wanted the stories, you know. There is professional help. So one night, as you know, some of you might stay up late at this crack on computers checking things out. So I was up one night at 3 one morning. My son gets up to use the bathroom, and he says, "What are you doing up, Dad?" And I said, "What do you think?" Like, he says, "Would you ever cop on?" I'll go on to the next one, I think. Yeah, there you go. So he said, "Would you cop on?" I said, yeah, right, whatever. 3 nights later, he rings me from Sligo. He's in Sligo going to college east. probably 19 at the time. He says, Dad. He said, tell me. He says, have we got relations up in Westmeath? Have we? And I said, yeah, we do actually. Yeah. I said, Corcoran. He says, yeah. He says, there's a Corcoran fella here. He says, he reckons we're related to us. And I says to him, ask him who his grandfather was. And of course, the young fella didn't know who his grandfather was. You know, usual story. So I started filtering all these questions back and over texting. But as they were talking, they were saying, what's your favorite sport? Who's your favorite hurler? Who's your thing? They were all going bang, 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 exact same thing. And they were getting more excited because they were drinking pints, obviously, and having the crack. And they're going, wow. And I said, now, Oisin, do you understand why I do family history? You know, and what happened, it turns out the young lad's great-grandfather, Patrick, was my uncle, Patrick, who had gone to Mullingar. But you would just realize how much of a small world we're living in and how important it is sometimes to know our family history, because, you know, other things can happen as well. You know, you could meet people out and get romantically inclined and find out that they're your second cousin, first cousin, or whatever it might be, you know. So I suppose that's why I started it. You know, they're all not all that interested. They may be interested in 10 years, 20 years time, but I had to figure out what I was going to do with it. All this information that was filling my head, I needed to put it somewhere for someone down the line, you know, because I think it's important. So like I was doing my wife's tree, they have a strong social history there in Corbley there as well, where her mother line is from. So I started working around that and recording that. And then opportunities arose where people asked, have you written about this event? Like there was an event in Corbley where Thomas Feeney was involved in a thing where the Tans came and raided the house. So I wrote an article for that for the Tuam Herald. So now that's there. And it's there digitally as well if anyone wants to look for it. My kids may not be looking for it, but it is there in here somewhere. But I brought them again as a prop, you know. So you kind of think, all right, very strong connection there with stories, you know, because that's I'm into theatre and drama, so I like a bit of drama. So the more drama that's involved in the story, the more I want to know more about it. What I do with it then is to try and preserve it factually. So to get the facts of it, because you know, anytime if I ask you a story, you're going to tell me one version of it, another version here, another version here, another version here. So what I try and do then is find out the facts. So I use various sources to get them. Sometimes it's the prison registers. If I'm looking for something on John Whiskers McHugh, the plasterer, there's not an awful lot written about the lovely work that he did in the cathedral or down in Dunmore, but there's plenty of references to him when he was in overnight in Dora. So I got descriptions of him, you know, because I asked my aunt, what was he like? She said, he was a small little man in big, long white beard, and we called him Whiskers, John Whiskers McHugh. So he looked very like my grandmother, my hero. This is my great-grandfather that I'm talking about. So I had a picture of him in my head, and in that picture of him in my head, I just thought, imagine this man is only 5'7" going on the prison records, but yet he was able to stand his ground in Tuam in the square of a night for whatever reason and go home, you know. So I'm thinking the times that he was living in, he wasn't getting paid for the work that he was doing, because we found records and letters that was given to me from another cousin who had a connection with the canon, the canon McHugh in Claremorris. So he was writing letters looking for payment for all these big jobs that he was doing. So already I'm going, oh, there's Whiskers McHugh, poor Whiskers McHugh. And all anyone remembers him for is for being drinking. Like when I'd asked my aunt, she said, oh, Aunt Kitty was very fond of the drink herself, you know. you talk to anyone here about their relationship. Oh yeah, she's very fond of the drink. So for me, that's fine, you know. You could say I'm fond of the drink too, but like why? Like why would someone at that time in that era, you know, develop this passion for? He seemed to be very passionate about the drink. But you know, that was part of the thread of the story that I needed to present factually to whoever is going to read it. So I had the letters, and I had the fact that he had done this ornate work in the cathedrals. The brothers, they all had this unique way of communicating by whistling, because they built these high scaffoldings far away from others, but had codes and ways of talking to one another through whistles. And all this thing as a child, when I was sitting around the fireplace beside her, just kind of expanded my mind completely. My whole consciousness went, wow, this is only like 50, 80, 100, 150 years ago, but there was another thing going on, like, and that kind of made me really excited about the character, so I became obsessed.
We have no sound. Oh, there we go. Good.
Just give me a few seconds. There's problems here with the sound. Sorry.
Is it me?
No, hang on. Sorry, Dan. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can, yeah.
Okay, I'm just changing it to the camera, so that might work a little bit better. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
I don't know how far I'm going to go with all this. I'd like to go on to another slide, actually.
Yeah.
Yes, so there's Corcoran's Corner, as it was back in the day. That was in our possession till 1946. But the amazing thing about Corcoran's Corner was it was willed to my father and to Ned Farrell. I mean, you remember Ned Farrell used to stand at the gates across. That Ned would be my first cousin to move.
So that's across from Farrell's.
That's across the Farrell. So Ned used to stand over here directing traffic, if you remember. And he'd be backing over for ball and malt. He was a great man for the ball and malt. But it was willed to my father. Anyways, this is the story I heard. It was him and Dad died when I was young. And all we ever heard was, what my mother heard was, because it left our hands in 1946. But what we heard was, oh, some woman contested the will. And your father being soft and Ned Farrell being soft or being whatever Ned was with the ball and malt, they didn't stand about and they just let it go. Geez, that's awful lot like that. We would give up. Like a property that was in our hands for 3 generations. We had a postal service there, funeral undertakers. It was the first postal service in Northwest Galway. Quite an established building from 1846. You're kind of going, Jesus, that's odd. So I went digging a bit and into John Henry's life. I found out John Henry was actually married, but we were never told about her. It was never recognised because they weren't cohabitating, let's say. John Henry was staying here, and Bridget Downey from Claremorris, who married, was in the home house that they actually had bought for John Henry down on Bishop Street, Michael Terrace. So I went, oh, okay, that's enough. So what we do, and straight back to the newspaper archives. That's where you go to get all the real information. So back into the newspaper archives, found the Tune Herald, and looked up Bridget Corcoran's funeral from 1940. She died about 3 years later, so 1949 or something around that time. And looked it up, and lo and behold, there's a lovely church. And lovely sugar. There wasn't one mention about Corcoran. Geez, that's very odd. Something must have happened. But what happened was she had sold the pub. She didn't keep the pub in the family hands, and she sold it on. So I presume there was an acrimonious split between the family. But it's amazing, again, another one of these stories is there. All you hear was, oh, some woman contested the will. And you go digging and find out exactly the man's wife, so she was entitled. You know? So there's all these stories, half-truths that we don't have, but to get them in fact, I think it's worth chasing, you know. So that's John Henry. So I've been on the search of a portrait of John Henry for, I'd say, about 17 years. I was told by Annaghdown that there was a portrait of him in the pub, and it was there over 3 successive owners of the pub. And I asked each and every one, did you ever come across a picture of John Henry? No, doesn't exist. To the most recent owner, Dave runs the Bridge Bar. And I said it to him. He said, no, it's not there, Sean. It's not there. COVID came around. First COVID came around. I said, they were in the attic. So I said, I've been in the attic. It's not there. Not there. It was all right for it. Second COVID came around. It was up in the attic. What did we find? So I was looking for this picture specifically for the article in Jobs, because there was an article in important the tune, and John Henry was a big part of the social, political life in Tune at the time. He was a big mover for the swimming pool. He was a politician. He was town commissioner. He was pushing for a lot of things like the beet camp, the sugar factory, etc., etc. So he was quite a heavy hitter. He wrote a lot of letters. He was also a poet as well. But I really wanted this picture for the article. It didn't exist. So I went on until that article was published. And in that article, I mentioned Bridget Downey. Not in any disparaging way, but I did mention that he was married to this woman, Claremorris. So I kind of thought to myself, isn't that kind of odd that the picture would surface after she has been recognised in the community once again, after 3 generations of us, obviously not recognising her for being. So I thought it's like, that's what synchronicity is. Like, what's his name? Carl Jung says synchronicity is something that happens beyond cause and belief. You know, there's a kind of thing he says, occurrences labeled as coincidence are not actually due to chance. Instead, he believed these occurrences are directly related to the observer's mind and serve to provide powerful insight, direction, and guidance. I'm going to sit down now. because that was the deep part of the thing. I had to write that piece down. I thought, geez, it's interesting that, like, I went on that effort just to get the facts right. And once the facts were there and she's recognized, picture shows up. They're like, there's more to it than that. And like, that's kind of, there's been loads of that doing the family tree, and I'm sure you might have found that doing your own trees, that these coincidences happen or synchronicities happen when you start doing the lines, you know. Like I've since discovered letters that my grandmother, my hero, wrote years ago over in America, because I found a connection somewhere. She said, oh, you know, such and such, and and between 4 emails later, I've got these letters that my grandmother wrote in 1962. And all those things kind of happen. We meet people, all of us, it's love, you know. So, that's that, isn't it? She's I've gone through a lot of what I was going to talk about. It's grand. Next. This is just another way of that you may not have thought about. If you find these pictures, I currently have, I have 170 pictures that were discovered in a house down in Lurgan. So I'd be the kind of lad that would drive down to the village and go knocking at houses and say, do you remember where Burke's house was? We were in that house one time, then we were in this house. And I ended up in the old house where Paddy Punch used to live, you know, because I knew that he'd been in the Dardanelles. There was no sign of his medals, because when he came home after the war and he found out that the brothers were out fighting with diarrhea, he took his medals in disgust and fired them into the fire. So we knew that there was no record of the medals. But I said, there has to be something. And I called down to the house, and in that, the house was left to a grand niece of Paddy Punch's brother's wife, if you know what I mean. So it was kind of out of the family, but in the family sort of thing. And they said, no, there's nothing here, there's nothing here. It's a house, I'm not ashamed. I said, you know, it's in South Africa. And he was in the Dardanelles, and he was in the regiment, Honours Regiment, in the army. And Jesus, I said, he had a gammy leg. I said, you know, I knew he had a limp. And now I said, oh, Jesus, he says, there's something up in the attic, all right? Up in the attic you go. And it was this whole leg brace, like a full leather leg brace. That had to be from the 1917 or 1916, you know, like this kind of time, like, and I'm going, that's been on your attic, and you never were inquisitive about it. If that was me, like, I'd be trawling through the country to find out. But it turned out it was Paddy Punch's leg brace. I says, so there's nothing else. He says, oh, there was something else. It was kind of a badge, all right. And he goes out into the shed. He comes in with a bistuff tin, you know, a rusty bistuff tin with full of nails. Empties the nails out into the table, and there in the middle of it is the badge, his regiment badge from his hat, and it's sitting in a tin of nails. And then I said, he said, oh, there was a coin up in the, you know, in the corner of the wardrobe, and we thought it was a South African coin. So like, there's all these things in people's houses that they don't understand, don't appreciate, you like when he saw how excited I was about them. That's when he got excited about them. I wasn't looking for them. I just wanted a picture of them just to have a record of them. But it's amazing, all those things. One man's goal is another man's something. Do you know? So, anyways, back to this. So, I knew this was my granduncle, Packy. Packy was famous. Footballer for Chin Stars. He also played for Galway. His younger brother Stephen also played for Chin Stars in Galway. And in the Chin Stars Centre, there's this big picture, big portrait picture with this man, his medal, his Thomas Slyan was his name, and his medals are there. You know? Wow. Jesus. Not lovely that we know who that is. And he's the only one that's recognised in the whole picture. And I thought to myself, Jesus, I must look up that. And I looked up, there's a book called Proud and Upright Men by Nola Dunham. That's a history of the Chin Stars and Galway football and that. And when I looked it up, there's a list of Sean or Stephen and Patrick Corcoran in it with Thomas Slyan. I thought, Jesus, he has to be one of them. So that's the only picture we had of my granduncle. So I went to a portrait artist about a year previously who restored a portrait of my grandfather. And I sent him this picture and I says, "Do you think any of them look like the lad in the portrait that you restored?" He said, "It is." He says, "That fella and that fella are brothers to your grandfather." I said, "How do you know that?" He says, "Because he's been doing portraits for so many years. He knows bone structure. He knows how ears sag. He knows what happens to your eyes after 50 years. So he was able to tell from these young pictures that the portrait that he restored for me, painted portrait, was him. And then he was able to identify Patty as this man here. So, like, don't ever give up on photographs. Like, as I said, I have 120 pictures there. I can identify about 5 of the Lurgan births in it. And there's all these other ones who are probably Donovans from Woodfield or down that side that I've yet to find out there. But someday, somewhere, you'll find someone that knows who they are. It took me to go into the portrait artist to identify a man that he didn't know. So there's other ways, aside from DNA, that you can work. So, like, that's that thing. That's Dale. I mentioned Dale McHugh. So you know who this man is here? Yeah, not just Michael Collins, because everyone has a Michael Collins story, don't they? Everyone's related to Michael Collins, aren't they? Michael Collins is a second cousin, once removed, of the husband of my Aunt Chrissy. So you kind of think like, so my Aunt Chrissy married Maura Sheehy down in Cork, and it turned out that his second cousin once removed was Michael Collins. We have fantastic Michael Collins. But then when I go digging into my own family tree, and I've mentioned already how the Burkes of Lurgan were all gone free state, went joined the Guards, la 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 la. And when digging a little bit further, find out that Mary Burke, my grandaunt, marries George McGrath. George McGrath was down in Tuam doing the audit of the shop that was closing down. They fell in love and got married. Turns out George McGrath was appointed the Auditor General for the first government in Dublin by my second cousin, once removed, great Aunt Chrissy. So there's another tie in to this Collins thing, you know. It turns out that the typewriter, Remington typewriter, Collins' first Remington typewriter that he was typing his documents on in that government was bought by George McGrath, my grand uncle-in-law. And that went up on auction there, sold for 60,000 or something recently. Why wasn't that done? So there's all these things going on. So then I went looking down the Collins trail, you know, I started chasing Collins. And Collins was elusive for a while because he was on the run and he'd run many pictures of him. So this is a rare picture of him at Port Gamalia's wedding. You know, Port Gamalia was Republican man, he was, you know, involved in a lot of shenanigans out in Connemara, but he got married to an acting woman, Eileen. And in the picture is Michael Collins. But not alone is in the picture of Michael Collins, but there's a lot of famous politicians in there. But not alone is that. It's this gentleman here, who's Dan Corcoran from Clonfush. When the Corcorans came into the Shanley Mill into Tuam, some of the Corcoran line went out to Clonfush, they ended up in Carristrand. Vincent Corcoran, who would have been a famous IRA Republican man, said to be the last attack on the RUC barracks in Ireland. He led that campaign. That's his uncle. So then I had to go looking at Daniel Corcoran, because Daniel Corcoran was a big name in our side. Turns out he's a radical as a priest. You know, in terms of being a priest, he was quite you can read all about him in Article Johnson number 18. But he was hanging out in very, very interesting circles for a priest at the time. But it's only because I found him in the picture that got the interest going that I went, okay, who is this Daniel Corcoran? And that's who he is, you know. So that's who he was. There's a source of links. 10 to 9.
Perfect.
Did you hear a song?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hang on, I'm going to.
As I say, I don't know how much use that was to you, but I hope it was in some ways entertaining animals
Certainly.
and the past and even for you. But it's the wheres and whys of why I do it. So Delia McHugh, as I told you, is my hero. I've written a song about her. So I can give you a song about Delia McHugh, or I can give you a song about Whiskers McHugh, or I can give you both songs. Well, my preference then was to sing the song about Whiskers McHugh and finish with Delia McHugh. She was the one to start all of this. And again, it's by ways of honoring them, because if you don't, they're going to be forgotten. You know, when I'm gone, I'll be forgotten. Or maybe I'll be remembered for reasons that I prefer were forgotten. So, we don't know. Whiskers McHugh, he was hot, get the key now. Whiskers McHugh, he was fond of the drink, more fond of it than you might think. So I've been told. Well known to the guards and to the courts, if you believe that all the newspapers report. Well, so I have read. He stood his ground on the square on Manny's the night, led home by his horse in the shadow of the moonlight. So it would seem the cousin, the priest, he was very concerned. Top class jobs done, no wages earned. Invoices sent, no money's returned. The letters that were sent in, I'm sure were burned. But sure, there's always two sides of the coin, and a fondness for the drink should not a man define. That much I know. He was a master craftsman, second to none. His work is still admired, and that cannot be undone. That much I know. A walk through the streets of Dunmore brings the same feeling as the spectacle that is Tuam Cathedral ceiling. His work reflecting down on me is so healing. When I see the work of John Whiskers McHugh, when I see the work of John Whiskers McHugh. Whiskers McHugh, he was fond of the drink, more fond of it than you might think. So it's been told. So it's always worth looking beyond it. Like, Dealing McHugh, as I say, was the inspiration for all of this. So she was Dealing McHugh, she married James Burke, my grandfather of the Guard. He was an ex-IRA man. Never spoke about it. She had a great saying, she was from up in Rye in the north, about 8-9 miles from Jim. She'd come up like once a month and stay with us as a treat, because James had died, and I was only about 8 at the time. She sent me up to Brown's pub, and she sent me up for 36 bottles of Guinness, a bottle and a half of brandy, and 200 players of wine. And she cleared the decks on whatever deck was in the shop at the time, because Brown's, that's where we used to get our groceries and stuff at the time. So there'd be a big bill there, and there'd be a session, sing song, and like singing, drinking, and smoking would be going on, and all of those stories. That's kind of where I got it from, you know. And she'd be half steamed. Every morning she'd open a bottle of Guinness beside the fire, and she'd grab it by the neck and say, "Fly you to come up any further." I thought she had magical powers, but she did. Like the froth would never go. She didn't want to waste the drop. But she'd read the fire as well, you know. She'd read the cards, and she'd tell me what was going to be happening in the future. And she'd read the ashes, and the morning she'd break out the ashes. She'd be telling me the future and all that. So she's a fascinating woman. But in the evening time, she'd have Q on her. And she'd be on a good few brandies now at this stage. She'd lift up the glass of brandy and she'd say, "James Burke, whatever use you are to me alive, you're a hell of a lot better to me dead." Because she was getting the guards, she was getting the widow's pension, she was also getting the guards. But and it is funny, but also, it also got me thinking about the guards' pension. But when I went looking about James in the IRA, he didn't look for pension. You know, so you can look for those records as well. So the point, I suppose, in me telling you that story isn't like to raise the laughs, and it's all right to laugh, but like you can go on the military archives and get, you know that. But like, it was interesting that James never went for the guard pension, because we used to call her Mammy Buck, as opposed to the old Mammy who we called Rose. The Mammy of the soul, the Mammy of the mud, the Mammy of the soul, Midie McHugh. I used to suck my boy when I was but a boy, just to be in the company of the Queen of Rye. They told me you had a song for every day of the year, and your voice was like a thunder crack, flowing with ease like the Hennessy cognac, the wisdom of the ages in your word. Slow airs on the mouth organ or little in tune. I was in the best of hands when I was with you. You set the bar high, Midie McHugh. Silver planet hair comb, breathing the fire, warm bottle of stout to fight to come any higher. You told Davy had a great neck on him for a news. The rose will bloom again in Roy, the rose will bloom again in Roy, the rose will bloom again, Midie McHugh. And I sing every day because of you, your sweet songs I still sing a few. Carrick Doon I sing for Midie McHugh. Because of you, I do what I do. If I only half of what you knew about the righteous in the queue. I try to be decent just like you. All these lines I write while I think of you. Ram cream, a crushkin in the queue. Ram cream, a crushkin, slantig yama boni. Ram cream, a crushkin on. Ram cream, a crushkin, slantig yama boni. Ram cream, a crushkin in the queue. So thanks for listening, and hope it passed an hour away from the end. Some of the stuff of the articles that are over here, if you have any questions from them, I never got to mention that, but that was a coronet that belonged to my granduncle Martin Corcoran. So I found out that Martin Corcoran and my great grandfather Patrick Corcoran were very heavily involved in the tune brass band when it was being formed, and in the management and the running of it. And as all this was unfolding, my late brother Christy got a call from Ollie Maloney. Do you know the famous trumpeter Ollie Maloney? And Ollie Maloney said, "Sean, he's from down the house, he's waiting to hear, I'm waiting to hear." He goes down to Ollie and he says, "Robert, I had this. I played this in the tune brass band when I was a child, back in the 50s. And on it has N. Corcoran, proprietor, tune brass band." So I went, "Oh, wow, I have to find out more." So back onto the archives of the tune, heard, and started digging around, and found out that Martin had, not alone was he a prominent member of the tune brass band, but he had his own brass band up on the top of Tunneldelly Hill called the Tunneldelly Hill Brass Band. And he used to go out to the Land League marches and protests, and he'd bring his band with him, but he'd have recitals. He used to do traditional music, but also some recitals in his house. So I found out that what happened was, at one stage, the tune brass band was going through a lull, and Martin says, "Look, I'm going to give you all my instruments, only if," this is in a letter to the Jim Hurley, because it was great. You can find the Jim Hurley a lot of times being communicated through letters, including one letter I found where my grandmother fell out, two boys that had undertakers, and one says, "Hereby say, I have nothing more to do with anyone by this name between the under here." So they went separate, went into separate business. So Martin was the one to run this thing anyway. But so in the letter it said that he would give the stuff over for a year, only if the brass band would rejuvenate, and obviously did rejuvenate. And this instrument was kept then for successive generations of players to play with it. And Ollie found it in a box. He said, "I remember playing that now. It needs a lot of work." But he gave it to my brother, and then I went researching. So like those things as well, when you find things, just trigger something to go and look for them. And I went to a store at the far side of the lake actually and asked them, you know, I was willing to spend a couple $100 quid, get it fixed. He said, "Oh, it's too far down." He said, "You make a nice lamp." So we don't talk anymore. It's your age. Thanks a lot for having me.
On behalf of
Oh,
yourself,
thank you.
and I would like to thank Midie for absolutely entertaining us, and his wonderful knowledge and his wonderful stories and his wonderful songs. Are there any questions from the audience here first? I'd like to ask him, yeah, Jerry?
I'm curious about connections. I'm curious how your son and this relative from Mullingar decided you were in it.
Oh, because they were steamed. Yeah, so I think Oisin was introduced to him by a mutual friend, and he said Corcoran, and he says, "Where are you from?" He says, "The man said he's from Mullingar." Oisin, of course, not having any interest in it, paid no heed, and the young lad, when Oisin said he was from Tuam, your man said, "Oh, I think we've got relations in Tuam," but like that link severed a long time. I would keep it up with their family line, but not down that line directly to it.
Amazing.
Yeah. But it happens all the time. Like I meet people all the time, and this is part of my condition. I think, you know, that like when I go out now, I built this from those scraps of paper where I've about nearly 10,000 people on my tree, solely because I meet somebody and I go, oh, are you related to? And it's not for me. It's not out of some kind of. I don't think it's out of any ego kind of based thing, but what's amazing is people have now started coming to me and saying, do you know anything about my grandfather so and so? And I said, well, I don't know about anything about your grandfather, I know something about your grand uncle. And then I'll find out about that and I'll find a little bit. So in some ways you're preserving and helping people get interested in it. So that's where that came up with.
What were the slides? What the ambition tree? Two letters there when I was going up and over the tree.
Yeah.
Slide.
SLOYA.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Is that the same slide?
yeah, I think that's this man would have been the father, Thomas Lyon, I think would have been the father of them or a grandson.
What interests you? Because it's a very unusual name, isn't
I don't know, but now the Jack. I'll tell you a good one, right? So, you know, your local library here has access to the,
I'm not sure if this one does, because it's
Yeah.
not connected to the county libraries.
okay. So if you go into the library in Tune, apparently, right? I've heard this, someone told me. If you go in with am I still on camera? If you.
We can create a proper sound here.
So just a disclaimer on this, someone told me that if you go in with your own laptop and you log on to their Wi-Fi and you leave the tab open, you know, so if you log in to use the county council Wi-Fi and log into the Irish archives, newspaper archives, leave the tab open on your computer. When you go home and log into your own Wi-Fi, apparently, because you can't be in the library for 6 hours looking up stuff. But when you go home and leave it open, apparently it stays open forever.
If you don't close the tab.
Yeah, if you don't. It's just interesting. It's like that question now. You kind of go, oh, well, who were they? And in that you find out, you find an obituary or something that leaves down there. Or an article sometimes, but I don't know. Like what I'm doing actually, one of my current projects is documenting all the businesses in Tune, because we're heavily involved in the businesses in Tune, and down the line then, like my great granddad married Paddy Garrett's grandmother. Their next line then was Brown. And so now I've started doing a family tree of all the Tune businesses. So, there's connections with the Cunninghams from out this way, from Duntubber, like those Cunninghams came into Tune and set up business there. So there's a lot of links of families from the rural areas that came into Tune, set up businesses, married in, blah, 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 blah. And like that's part of the condition. Which is interesting.
What years from June, what years are you looking at the businesses from?
I started in Weekend Town, which was around 1820.
Oh.
So there's I don't know the name of those directories, Thompson's.
There's Thompson's, there's Pigot's, there's a few of them.
So like you'll find the early records of some businesses are listed, some aren't. But it's the obituaries. The obituaries are amazing. I can't stress how much fun they are. Like you find out, who was at the funeral, and even who sent cards and who sent telegrams. And cards received the week after. It's a list of maybe 70 or 80 people that sent cards and telegrams received from all these people. It's phenomenal.
But it's changed so much. I mean, since I was running to Tune, all the businesses have changed, like Burks and Miss whatever that they've lost them, and shop, there was two ladies in there.
Oh, the Millins, Grady Millins, yeah. I haven't figured out where they fit in.
Yeah, I'm so curious.
But no, I see, I would we're going for the evening, but like that's what happens, you find those little things and then, find out who's related. We're all, like, as I say to people, like we all let out the same cloth, it's interesting. Like, I'd say even if we sat down here, what was interesting one night, I think over in Latin was everyone came in with a kind of a printed tree or a rough kind of tree and we put it up around the wall. There was about 30 people and everyone around there. That's amazing. Everybody would turn, oh, it's fine with there. Like, no. And it doesn't take an awful lot like to find the threads from one family to the next.
If there's any questions online, raise your hand and we'll buzz you in.
Which is talking online.
We're online.
Jeez, James, how are you not going to bed yet?
Or feel free to type them into the chat if you don't, Jen. Oh, you few.
Maria O'Brien there, she's an expert on the Hessians. Many of any Hessians related questions. Maria, they have a dedicated Facebook page about Hessians. She's a phenomenal resource. She's actually mapped out the entire Hessians of North onto a map. So if you want to talk about the Ballybeg Hessians or the Hessians from Ballymote, you can click into a map there and she'll have the whole lines done. Phenomenal. She's done phenomenal work.
Any last chance for a question online, or we're going to have the tea?
God, look, they're fed up listening.
You're very fortunate to have been exposed to stories when you were younger and paid attention to them. I think it's a problem for many people, including myself. One of my aunts and my dad in particular had lots of stories, but when I had a chance to talk to them, they were no interest in them.
I'm sure that's
many people.
If you look around the demographic, this room here, even, like there's some people, there's one or two people older than me. These are the people that I'd be going to for questions. And this man over here in the corner has told me many stories that prompted other stories. So you go and find these people in your local village and get them. Like, I was lucky because I had Delia McHugh to inspire me, but I was even more luckier that my Aunt Mary Delia left me a collection of tapes with all her songs on it. So there's about 12 old tapes recorded from the 70s, from 74, 75 up to maybe the 80s. And I've digitized them now. That's why I'm learning some of her songs again by way of like a tribute to her.
So my trouble is the second, you mean 1970?
Yeah.
That seems like yesterday to me. That's my grand. Old is 1920 or 19.
But even in those times in the 70s, a lot of the problems that we were encountering was we didn't have the money to buy batteries. We might have tapes, or we could stick the sellotape over to record stuff.
Yeah.
We didn't have the money for the batteries, or vice versa. You know, whereas now we've got these things in our pockets. Like this is the best resource. If we could just get out and talk to people, because we underestimate. Like you go and talk to people like Michael Cahill and like Pat, you know the value of these stories, but there's little pieces in that story that someone might be looking for in 15, 20 years time. You know, and even for us to do that now, like I know there's a big move for it. You know, the Dukas Folklore Collection was phenomenal for that. We have the technology to do it now, and that National Library, what's it called? I have it on the link there. Like that's one of the most amazing sources because in that they have ancient manuscripts, they have history books, they have poetry, they have
our catalogue and all.
yeah, this one.
There's a new repository of letters.
Yes,
Yes.
and we were talking about that. Yeah, but like you know, I think it's our duty, it's our own to do it. That's my attempt to doing it is to do it through song or you know story or writing it. But you did that one there. If you haven't been onto it, it's actually phenomenal. Not that one, the library one. NLI is it? This one.
Catalogue and all.
Yeah. Have you been on that? With all sorts of them. All like you get lost in that for about
That
3
is
weeks.
that.
It is that one.
I think is it digital UCD? I know the one you need.
Digital UCD is the one where you find out information in the guards and a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
The Archives Irish newspaper is the newspaper one. But again, neighbours on a phone. The parish records, if you're going to Tune is an amazing resource. If you don't like the digital world, if you go into the parish centre in the old Mercy there, they have reams of paperwork in there. You're not allowed to take pictures. disclaimer.
When we get the list of the,
Well, you'll find homes, they have records from 1790 all there. Like.
This one.
Yes, that one. This one is phenomenal. Like, and I keep on forgetting it, but when I went to look, there's 151,000 photographs in there. I found pictures from the 50s, and my uncle Nick, who went, he was a railwayman, and he had the house right beside the railway line, and the canal, and there's pictures of him in the garden with the young kids. Like, how do you find that? Where were you going to get things? They didn't have a camera at the time. Well, I just happened to be looking for Corcorans or Burks and monuments, you know, there they were. And there's all sorts of, there's musical scores, 20,000 musical scores of tunes, tuned to music. They're all there recorded. Manuscripts, documents, look at it. History, 125,896 things. You don't know what you're going to find in there about one of your ancestors. There could be something written there, you know, we've lost all the records. When you go back, and you might find something from your village that's been recorded with an ancestor's name in there. That's the name has been lost to be lost up to different
That's the what
the records.
That's it.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Any other questions online or any from here? Okay, will we leave it so? Yeah.
Are you connected to the Corcorans in
Corrandulla?
Carabrow?
Not that we know of yet. I've been in that to do a DNA
Yeah,
test.
family tree.
I haven't been a family tree, all right. Genuinely, I think we are, if we go back farming. My theory, and I'm not an expert on Y DNA, but I've done Y DNA testing and I've talked to a Corcoran who is an expert, a guy called Jared Corcoran, who is an expert on all things DNA, especially Y DNA. And his research would lead him to believe that there's 4 distinct lines of Corcoran, one from Fermanagh, one from Corcoran, Sligo, and one from Tipperary. So my theory is that most of the Galway Corcorans would eventually come up from Tipperary in the 1600s. So that the autosomal DNA won't give us those records. But if I got Nick Corcoran up there, or Mike Corcoran in the end, to do the Y DNA, we might find where we are later further back. Like, I know that we are. Like, there's Corcorans in Tonnahull.
Tonnahull.
Yeah. Redmond Corcoran is a very distinctive name. I saw his name and I'm chasing him. I think we all are. And the reality is, like, I have 2 great grandmother Monahans, one from Lurgan and one from Corran, which is like 4 villages. So it's only 4 miles between. I haven't found, like, the DNA is so mixed up in the autosomal that you can't. It's very hard to disentangle it. But there's a great man, Monaghan. Kevin Monaghan in Carstrand on the Y DNA, but again he's also literally obsessed with it. So he has got the Y DNA of the Monaghans from North Galway back to one singular source, probably from around Belgium from 13 something. Now we don't have the records to go with that. The DNA would go, okay, that's where one Monaghan man that came out of Belgium is the great of all these Monaghans.
Yeah.
It's nuts when you think about it. But interesting.
Yes. Just on the chat, get back to it, where the chat on. We had, let me see. James, Harold, saying great stuff, Mighty, thank you. Margaret saying well done, Mighty. Max Fury, who we may have mentioned earlier. Yes, indeed. Say lovely, Mighty. Maria O'Brien, thanks, Mighty, for an entertaining hour. Michelle really enjoyed this. Yeah.
I think she was saying lovely, Mighty.
Could be, yeah, absolutely. Mary O'Shea, thank you for allowing Zoom access in the US and in the program. And Maria O'Brien, thanks, Mighty, for the honourable mention. There you go. So thanks to everybody who joined us online and in person tonight. And once again, thanks very much to Mighty for keeping us all entertained on a March Wednesday night. Thank you.